Hello everybody. I'm pleased to be in front of the camera once more. I like to do these videos a little bit more regularly, but we don't always get to do what we want when we want to. There was another video that we did, and unfortunately that got corrupted and we couldn't use it, so I'm doing this new video in order to replace the old one. The books that I did for that video I don't have on this pile here, but at some point in the future I'm sure I will actually do a video using those books that I'd had for that other video before this one, if that makes any sense. But yeah, it's because I wanted to do it so I would do one every, instead of every month, every 3 weeks. I mean, it would be even great if I could do every 2 weeks, but circumstances and things like that, you don't always get to do what you'd like or what you'd planned. So it's nice to be here, it's nice to be in front of the camera, and it's nice to be actually talking about doing a new video in 2025. So I have a stack of books here that I've ordered. These are all like what I would call sort of £5 books. £5 books isn't the kind of price that I always spend for on my books. I'd spend £20, £30, £40, even higher sometimes. I know there was this one book that I bought, and it was going for £80, £90, £109, and then I saw it for £37 and I snapped it up, so I had to have it. There's a book that I've got my eye on that was going for £44, and now it's going for £66, which is just obscene. So I'm going to have to look, or have to wait until the price of that book comes down so I can actually buy it. But 66 is a bit steep. So they're in no particular order, but I thought I'd start with let's see. I just this one. I got a book here by Peter Wyden called The Wall. Why I've picked this book is because when this book was published, The Wall was still up, and when it came out, the year it came out, The Wall came down, and they were actually saying to the author, would he like to write a postscript to this book, and he said no, he wants to leave it as it is. So this is a book that I can't wait to get into, but it's one of these library books, it's like a book that you've had for a long while and you haven't got round to reading it, and it, and as I was going through all my books on my library, I'd suddenly see this one and think, I really need to read this book. I've been meaning to read this book, I never got round to reading it. Peter Wyden is a Berliner, an echter Berliner, meaning he's a proper, a real Berliner who moved to the United States. He was Jewish, so he knew the writing was on the wall, so he got out in good time. And as they say, it's a better years too early than a day too late. And Peter Wyden was smart enough to see that, and he moved to the United States. The other reason why I mention this particular book is because of this one, Stella, Peter Wyden. Now, this is a book that I'd shown on one of my other videos, and this is regarding a woman that was a Jew catcher in Berlin. She would go around the city, this during the course of World War II, as you understand. She would go around noting the behaviours of Jews that would give themselves away, or consequently she knew who these people were, so she knew like they were Jews, and she would catch them, and they would be sent to the Gestapo. The Gestapo would suddenly catch them, or they've been how can I put this? Somebody gone to the Gestapo, gone to the police, and told on them. You know, so a snitch, you know, a grass, as we would call them. This deserves a reread. But Peter Wyden, he wrote this book, and he knew who this woman was. So it wasn't like he was doing research on her. He knew who she was, and consequently, he wrote a book about her. Now she was a woman that was very popular. You know, it's like the in crowd. You know, if you go to a particular school, and there's like a clique of people, and they're like, they're the most popular. Everybody knows them, and there would be people that would like to be part of their crowd, their in crowd, and she was certainly one of them. So she, you know, she was very beautiful. She didn't look at all Jewish, because I think there's a certain look that Jews have. She didn't have any of those things, and consequently, she reveled in her not only in her beauty but in her popularity, and people looking up to her and bowing down to her, and so this is a woman that was constantly looking for validation, almost, you know, maybe borderline narcissistic. But it's through this book that I found this one. So this is all to do with the wall, and what I like about it, it's the personal. It's not just about the building of the Berlin Wall. It's about the personal stories of those that were involved, families that were split up as a consequence of the wall. People wanting to, desperate to see their relatives. They couldn't go to see their relatives. Those that got sick because of the pressure, because of the authoritarianism. Because of the state having so much control over the population, that it literally affected people, and it affected families, and it also the regime of the SED. That the SED was the political party of East Germany, and consequently this had a psychological effect on those people that were caught up in it, and then there were others that weren't. You know, it just didn't affect them. It was just, they just carried on with life as normal. It was never a bother to them. They just got on with life. You know, if they were able to go on holiday for 2 weeks in a year, they would go to, say, Bulgaria or Romania or Hungary or places like that. So it didn't really affect them. But in this story, or Peter Wyden would go and actually interview some of these people where it did affect them. And why this is so significant, especially historically, is because this was done when the wall was up. That's what makes this book so unique. There are so many books that were written after the fall of the Berlin Wall, but this is not one of them. Also about this book is that it's like what I call a penny book. A penny book is a book that they sell for a penny, and you pay postage, which could be £2.60 or £2.80, whatever it is. Then you can also see, like, it's got like a marker pen, a black marker pen. You know that this is a book that is either sold off cheap, or you could buy it cheap at a book fair or a flea market or a charity shop or something like that. But you know, I got this book for a penny, and of course, you know, I jumped on it. This is a great reading copy. It's not, you know, it's not like I would, you know, this is not a book that you spend 15 quid. Although I wouldn't be put off if I really, really wanted it, especially as I know the author because of that other book, Stella, the Jew Catcher. So I can't wait to get into this one. Quite a thick book. Really looking forward to reading this, but I've got so many others that I'm reading through at the moment, so it might be some time before I actually get to read this one. Let's see. So, now, this is a book that I just bought. Again, a lot of these books, I would say that I have here, are books that I bought cheap online. All of them were bought online, but these were sort of like at a £5 or just below a £5 or just over. So This is called The Hunt for the Jackal. Now, what's similar, why I sort of picked this book, and in some ways compare it to the other one, is when this book was published, the wall came down. And with this book, this is when Carlos the Jackal was caught. But again, the author doesn't include it in the book. So it was the year that he was caught. Now, Carlos the Jackal was a notorious terrorist during the 70s and in the 80s. He was somebody that I actually remember in the 70s. So what I mean by that is that when it was on the news, I can actually remember when they were reporting it, because he went to Vienna and he did an operation against OPEC. This was instigated, I believe, by Gaddafi. I'm not 100% sure because I haven't read this book. As you can see, it's a massive tomb of a book. But I remember it at the time, and anything that is kind of personal like that, like the memory of watching it on the news, like I remember, say, the assassination of Sadat. He was the president of Egypt, I believe. I'm not 100% sure, but I just remember it. Cyprus. I mentioned Cyprus because Cyprus is divided. I actually remember, it might be a false memory actually, but I'm consciously aware of it when the Turks invaded northern Cyprus, because as some of you might know, Cyprus is divided. You've got the southern part, which is the Greek side, and you've got the northern part, which is the Turkish side. Berlin, of course, when I remember seeing the Berlin Wall, taking photos of the Berlin Wall, so I actually saw it, and I saw East Berlin and I saw West Berlin at the time. Kenya, which is really personal to me, because I was there with the army, and to see that the army is still there, I was really surprised by that, and also the history, because Kenya was a colony, and they got their independence in 1963, but I believe there's a kind of a neo-colonialism to it. By that I mean because there are still British troops based there. Now, why is this all relevant? Well, it's relevant because of this book, because I remember seeing it at the time when Carlos the Jackal had that operation in Vienna, and he actually got away. I'm going to do a deep dive on Carlos the Jackal. I believe there is a lot to say. It's definitely worth a video on who this man is, because Carlos is not his real name. His real name is Illich, I think, or Illich, is his Christian name. But he changed his name to Carlos. And of course, the press dubbed him Carlos the Jackal. There is an album that I've got, which I haven't got it here with me, but I'm going to do one. When I do a video, I will hold up that album, and it's done by a group called Black Grape. Black Grape was a band with that was. Came from the ashes of the band Happy Mondays, and it was through the Britpop era. And I remember at the time when they were talking about, I think he was on Later with Jules. I think it's called Later with Jules, and that's when they spoke about the cover, because it was, they had Carlos the Jackal on the cover. And they were talking about it, and I bet that there are a lot of people, if they were to look at that cover today, they wouldn't know who Carlos the Jackal was. And I've got to be honest, I didn't, but I just remember the time when I was watching the news, because I'm Austrian on my mother's side, and how that stayed in my memory when Carlos the Jackal did that operation against OPEC in Vienna, and they they got on the plane and they got out of Vienna from Schwechat Airport. And I remember it as clear as day. So, and why I'm holding up this book, because my channel is about Berlin. It's the connection between Carlos the Jackal and the Stasi. So, to the ends of the earth, the hunt for the jackal. This will be really quite an exciting read. Okay. Hannah Reich. Excuse me, I don't get the coughs now. There's no editing in this. Hannah Reich. She was a test pilot during World War II. She was a bit of a star during the Nazi era. She looked up. She was I would say, an ardent Nazi. She looked up to Hitler. She met him, I believe, twice. She said how embarrassed she was, and also upset she was when she eventually did see Hitler, because she said she caught him picking his nose. And that must have been really awful, because, you know, if you see somebody that's like, you know, like a film star, you know, like film stars or musicians, or great musicians, like if you was to see Paul McCartney, or if you was to see, I don't know, Jimmy Page or Jimi Hendrix or someone like that, you know, you kind of bow down to them. Or if you was to see Harrison Ford or someone like that. And for her, it was seeing Hitler, and then the illusion of the person is shattered. So she was anyway, she was this brilliant pilot, and she would do lots of test flights, testing out all the new all the new planes. She survived the war, and she was known for the flight to the Hitler bunker in the last days of the war. And that wasn't an easy thing to do, because by then Berlin was surrounded. The Russians were attacking Berlin, or the centre of Berlin, from every different angle. And Hitler insisted with von Grimm to come to the bunker, and for Hitler to promote von Grimm to be the head of the Luftwaffe. And I mean, this was, I mean, it lost all meaning by that point, because it was like only maybe 2 or 3 days before the end, before Hitler took his own life. This is a German book. This is a book that I've got, because I've already got a few books on Hannah Reich. But why I picked this book is because it was cheap, and also it's only about 100 pages or so it'll be easy to read. And also the fact that it's an autobiography. So I mean, she's going to give an overview of her life. You know, she's going to tell you all the good things about, you know, what she'd done and stuff like that. And because it's an autobiography, anything negative, I'm sure she's going to leave out. She's not going to expose herself. This is like a fan book. You know, it's one of those knockoff type books that came out in the mid-70s. But as obvious as that is to me, it didn't put me off in any way, and I'm glad to have got this book. Okay, so I've got a couple of books here. I've got one. This one's called Selected Documents of Germany and the Question of Berlin, 1961 to 1973. And these, and I like the fact that it says selected, because I believe that the government are not going to tell you everything that is in the documents. If there's anything that they deem sensitive or embarrassing, they're going to delete it. And this will also go for the West German government. If there's anything in these files that they deem inappropriate for the public to have access to, they will redact it, or they will not include it in this particular book. Now, I bought this book at £2.90 plus postage, so I did really well, because these books are going for £40 or £50. This was published in 1975, and it's one of my prized books in my collection because it documents, and documents are very revealing, especially if you've done a lot of reading and studying on Berlin and on, say, German, West German and East German history. You know, you might be able to fill in the blanks, or you'd be able to put two and two together, so to speak. You'll be able to dot every I and cross every T. And with a book like this, as dry as it might be, it's well worth reading, because from here you will certainly get more insights into how Berlin was run at the time. But not only that, you have to understand that West Germany was a creation of the Americans. And also for the fact that since 1945, Germany has been pretty much occupied by the Americans. You've got not just the Americans, you have the French and the British naturally. Now the French I really don't know much about, I've got to be honest with you. So there's a lot of information from the French perspective that I haven't come across yet, and if I do, it will all be written in French, and I can't speak French. So that will be a problem. The other thing is that the Americanization of the German society. Now, I had a whole load of... When you go on Amazon, you have like what they call history, which is like a record of all the books that you've clicked on that you mean to buy at some point. But you've got them as a reference. Now, my computer there was like a disruption on my computer or something like that. Something went wrong, and tragically, all that what I collected on Amazon has now disappeared. So there were like other documents that I was hoping to get, you know, documents of Berlin, that have now disappeared, and I don't know what the titles are. And when I type in Berlin documents, I can't ever find them. Of the ones that I knew that I had. So that was tragic. But this one is brand new. By that I mean this one was I didn't have in my history, Amazon history. So this was one that I actually found, and I'm pleased to have found, because documents like this are quite revealing. Because these are things that get published, but if a researcher overlooks the information, there might be some information that is, I would say, priceless to me, but not to anybody else, if that makes any sense. So yeah, selected documents of Germany and the question of Berlin, 1961 to 1973. Okay, now this was another find. Like this, that's why I got these two books up like that, because this is another find that I didn't expect to, it was unexpected, put it that way. Gosh, I got the coughs. Why do I mention this? Now, I think this is my third book on Lord Hawthorne. I want to do a video on Lord Hawthorne. But why am I making such a fuss with this book? It's because release of documents. They've released, like, it's all full of MI5 files on Lord Hawthorne. They were surveying him in the 20s. It wasn't like, he just went to beg your pardon, he just went to Germany at the start of the war. They were surveilling him since the 20s. I mean, it's astonishing, really, when you look into it. So this is a part of, say, British history, and you could say German history as well, that we don't often see because of the files being so secret. But they released the files. I think this was in maybe 1999 or in 2000. And this particular author, Peter, let's see, Peter Martland, released as a book. And this gives a whole new perspective on Lord Haw. I know with biographies and autobiographies and memoirs and things like that, they kind of get filtered, or I'd say the memoirs do and the autobiographies do. But as far as information's concerned, you might not have access. I'm sure there were a lot of authors before these files were released. They didn't have access to these files. So they had to get them from other sources or second-hand sources, or they had to interview people that knew Lord Haw. But once you get these files, you suddenly see a whole new perspective on Lord Haw that you hadn't seen before. Now, I will say this. I believe that Lord Haw already had the noose around his neck the day he flew back to the UK. Now, I'll go into this in a lot more detail when I do a video on Lord Haw. But that's what I believe actually happened. But with these files being released in book form, like this, I will see as to why. I'll get an information. I'll get more insight as to why they were so determined to hang this man. Because I believe it was a technicality, and it was a form of lawfare that they went to the process. They went to all this trouble to create a law in order to hang Lord Haw. And I want to know why they chose to do this. So, yeah, Lord Haw, the English voice of Nazi Germany. This will be a very interesting book to read. I'm actually looking forward to that one. Let me see. Talking of the list of books that I had on Amazon, sort of Amazon history, where I kept a record of them that are now gone. Well, this is one of them. This is the book that I had, or at least that was on the list. And so when I saw this, I snapped it up. And also the price was really good, because a lot of these books here were going for like a £5, just under or just over. So this was a steal when I got this book. Now this is about, let's see what it says it here. Sorry, I got Berlin-Hohenschönhausen. Hohenschönhausen. It was a prohibited district of East Berlin where they would keep a lot of prisoners. They would take them to this prison, and now it's a kind of it's a museum. It's become a museum, and it was the biggest complex of its time. And in West Germany, they didn't have anything like this. But in East Germany, if you were someone that would in any way do something that will in some way embarrass or that would damage the state in one way or another, they would arrest you, and they would do everything that they can to throw the book at you. And the form of torture that they would use, psychological torture, and the interrogation that they would put you through, and the rules that you had to live by while you were in prison, can have long-term psychological effect, even after your release. This Hohenhausen prison complex, from the time of its inception, which I believe was in 1950 to 1989, they had between 20 and 22,000 prisoners. That's a lot of prisoners. also what's unique about this is that this area, this restricted area, doesn't appear on any map. So if you were to get a map in East Germany, this particular district wouldn't appear on it. What's also unique are the photographs. There's a lot of great photographs that I've never seen before that will show you how, where buildings of one kind or another that will actually that you would actually see how the cells looked like, and all kinds of paraphernalia and technology, the technology that they were using to actually help arrest these people or survey these people, or do all kinds of things, is quite revealing, because in those days it was more analog. Now it's all digital, but in those days it was analog. But it's still fascinating to see the power of the state and what they will do to control their population. But this particular book here will actually give like a keyhole view into what it was to live through East Germany from the time that Ulbricht got into power, and who was the head of the dictator of East Germany, up until Honecker and Egon Krenz, when the wall finally came down. So also, this is in English, by the way, so it will be an easy read. I can get through this book quite quickly. So this is relatively new. I only just come through the post a couple of days ago, so glad to have it. Okay. Die Jahre der Kommune 1. Die Jahre, that means the year of Commune 1. This is at the time of 1967, 1968, 1969, 1970 of the Baader-Meinhof gang, or the Red Army faction as they called themselves. The Baader-Meinhof gang was a press invention. The Red Army faction is the actual name of what they these terrorists call themselves, and it sort of came out of the commune of the time. 68 was a really disruptive time. A lot of student protests, a lot of protests going on the street, a lot of disruption against the society of the capitalistic system as it was at the time. This you could study 1968 in and of itself because of what was going on. And if you've got the Beatles' White Album, John Lennon's famous song Revolution actually says it all in the lyrics. And of the Rolling Stones, it would be Street Fighting Man. Those are the two songs that actually represent what was going on at the time. So, but that's like the starting off point. If you really want to get deep into the subject, you'd have to sort of read the books, and this is one of them. Now, this is quite a relatively thick book. It's all in German. I got it because it was cheap, and also for the fact that I want to do a video on the Baader-Meinhof gang, which is a massive subject in and of itself. I mean, you could study that subject for years. I know there's a guy called Richard Hoffman who's like one of the authorities on the Baader-Meinhof gang, and he focused on the first generation, and there were 3 generations. It's almost like those that study the assassination of John F. Kennedy, where they'll just focus on John F. Kennedy and not his brother. It's like they're both massive events, because one was to end a presidency and the other one was to prevent him becoming president. But this book goes, this starts off from an angle and the perspective of the commune and the kind of relationship that the students had with the state. And I tell you what, if you try to come up, if you in any way try to in some way attack the estate, they will get you. I mean, the power that these people have is off the charts. So you wouldn't even bother being an activist. I know I wouldn't, because they will survey you and they will do everything to disrupt your life and destroy you. So, Der Jahre der Kommune 1, or the year of Commune 1. This is a book that I picked up. It wasn't something that I just bought recently. This is a book that I've had for a while. And I just thought I would bring it up because it's one of those books that you can read maybe in an hour or so. And this will give you an overview of the division of Berlin as it was at the time. And I think this was written for soldiers to get, that were American soldiers that were patrolling the Berlin Wall at the time. And one of the things I remember, because I had a VHS tape and I'd recorded a program about Berlin at the time in the 80s. And one of the things that was prevalent, that I remember clearly, was how the Americans would patrol in their jeeps going around the Berlin Wall. And one of the things, it wasn't anything to do with what the East German guards would do or anything like that. There was none of that at all. What they were concerned about were joggers, because the joggers at the time would jog around the Berlin Wall with their headphones on. So they had Walkmans. A Walkman was like a device that you would have, and you'd play music from your favourite artist, on cassette tape. Because I'm sure there are people that don't know what a cassette tape is. But it's just imagine having a mobile phone with your earplugs in. And so when these American border guards, American soldiers would patrol the Berlin Wall, they had to be mindful of the joggers, because you can't suddenly scream and shout at them because they couldn't hear you. So it was a problem for the German, beg your pardon, the American patrols in their jeeps patrolling the Berlin Wall. Not so much for what the East Germans would do, it's because of the joggers that were jogging with their headphones on, and they can't hear anything, so they can't hear the jeep coming up to them. So yeah, it's just a small observation, but something that is often overlooked when you talk about the Berlin Wall. Now, this is another book that I just got recently, The Fall of the Berlin Wall by William F. Buckley. I'm not sure when this was published, actually. I think it might have been published in the 90s. Let's have a look. 2004. These books I'm sort of wary of, really, because there are books. This is the kind of books that you probably find at Waterstones or a bookstore like Barnes and Noble if you're from the States. That it will take up a small amount of shelf space. If you were to look through, say, the German section or World War II, you'll probably only find so many books that they can put on their shelves. And this looks like the type of book that they would put on their shelf. Again, I bought it because it was cheap. I don't really have much to say about this book, except the cover. I was expecting a different cover when I ordered it, because I saw the cover that I thought I would get. So when I got this, it was like, oh, it's a different book cover. It's a different cover. Having said all that, I do actually like the photo on the cover, because I'm trying to collect as many photographs of the Berlin Wall when the Berlin Wall actually came down, and this one actually depicts West Germans. I suspect these are West Germans. They could be East Germans, but I suspect they're West Germans holding hands on top of the Berlin Wall right at the Brandenburg Gate. So I don't know when I'll get to read this. I might not ever read this. But it has an introduction by Kissinger, which is interesting, as he was known to be a war criminal. But yeah, curiosity really about this one. I'm not holding my breath with this book. But anyway, I'm going to keep it. Right, this is the decline and fall of Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. I bought this book in Windsor many years ago, actually. Why I brought it was because it was one of those books where, you know, when you haven't seen a book in a long while. I mean, those that have got lots of books, when you haven't seen it in a long while, and then all of a sudden you're going through your books and you say, oh, crikey, I haven't seen this one. And then you go through it because there's loads of pictures, lots of captions to read and everything like that. And I remember when I bought this, I think I paid £8 for it or something like that, only to realise how cheap it was really going. And I thought I got a bargain. So it's the antithesis of the penny book that I had that I showed earlier on. And this one was like £8. But I mean, £8, all right, it's reasonable. And, you know, I laugh about it now. But I was a little bit peeved. The fact that I spent a lot more on the book when it could have been a lot cheaper. But having said that, you know, I'm happy to have this book. And it, like I said, it's one of those books, because I realised as I'd gone through all my books, I don't have that many on World War Two. I got most of them are Cold War. They're not, you know, I was surprised at that. I thought I'd have a lot more books on World War Two than I have on the Cold War. There are loads on the Cold War. Having said all of that, it's really good to actually have a book like this, which is quite thick, and it's full of pictures, because a picture actually could give you almost a better idea of World War Two, as opposed to, you know, reading thousands of words of text. So this has got both. It's got text and it's got lots of pictures in it, and it's one of those books that I forgot I had, and only going through some of my books, and I'd gone through my bookshelf, did I decide to show it all to you guys, because books like this are quite valuable, because this book has long since been deleted. I think this will be the last one now. This is by Kurt Rees, Berlin, 1945 to 1953. I've nearly finished this book. I'm really pleased that I've got this far, because this is a book that was given to me by a dear friend who I suspect has passed away, and it's a book that I kept for sentimental reasons, always with the thought of, yeah, at some point I'll get to read it. And then I started to read it during the COVID, and I was still working at the time. I hadn't lost my job. I was still working at the time. And then I put the book down after 60 pages, and then it's like years later did I eventually get to pick up the book again to read, and to read from where I left off. Now the plan is, once I finish this book, because I've nearly finished it, once I finish this book, I will reread those 60 pages that I read while the COVID was happening, to get up to date, and then I will go on to read the English version of this book. You know, Kurt Rees was an American journalist and author. He was living at Berlin at the time, so it was as it was happening, and he would write it down. So he would talk about all sorts of things. It wasn't just from a political perspective or from a military perspective, although that is included. He was actually talking about everyday people, and that really is what it's all about. It's all about the people who live, you know, their normal lives, day to day, and how it was like from the aftermath, because I think the aftermath of the Second World War is just as revealing as the war itself. So it has a lot to say. There were some powerful things that I came across in this book that actually did surprise me, and there were things that were, oh, that's interesting, oh, I didn't know that, and oh, that's unique, you know, I must look into that. And there's a book that I will eventually get as a result of having read this book, that it gets, because he talks about it for a couple of pages, and that sparks an idea. Oh, and then, you know, and I think, oh, I must get a book about that, of what he's talking about. I don't want to give it give the information on this video. You know, I'll talk about it in a later video when I've actually finished reading this book. So yeah, Kurt Riess, Berlin, 1945 to 1953. I just got this little book here. I'm going to do a top 10 of Berlin books. I want to stress this because with the books that I've got, I hope somebody out there will go and look for the book themselves. Now, I'll give you a top 10 of what I think are the best books that you should get from the books that I've actually read, or at least I have in my collection. So I won't talk about a book that I don't have. I'll talk about the books that I actually have, and most of them I'll have read through them. Now, this one is tiny, it's a pocket book, and having said all of that, it's got lots of pictures and lots of text. Now, I highly recommend, if anybody's out there and wants to go to Berlin, like Stick or people like that, that you get this book. Let me see, it says it's called The Berlin Wall Story by Hans Hermann Helty. Hans Hermann Helty. This is a book that you should have, and this will be a book in my top 10. Honestly, for something so small and almost insignificant, this is a powerful book. It might actually take you a while to read because the text is quite small, but this will give you a fantastic overview of what it was like in Berlin when the Berlin Wall was up. Anyway, that pretty much concludes my video presentation. I wish you all well for 2025, and after the tumultuous year that we've had of 2024, I hope it gets a little bit better for 2025. So all the best, and auf Wiedersehen.